Hey there. I want to thank you for tuning in to Operation Domination. And I want to let you know that our episode today is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. If you're an advocate fantasy football player or you want to bet on your sports, go to Underdog Fantasy or Underdog Sportsbook. And when you use the promo code ffadvice, you will get a dollar for dollar match up to $100 on your initial deposit. So go check it out today. All the drafts you could ever hope for, all the betting you could ever spend on, $100 dollar for dollar match when you use the promo code ffadvice at underdogfantasy.com.
Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan Mayer.
But what's more impressive to me about the
Chase
fact
Thornton.
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
Chris Dowhouse.
Get him, Chase. Get him, Chase.
And Adam
No,
LaRue.
not necessarily, but it's again the same as
Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
We're here. We finally made it. Tell mom and dad. Operation Domination debut on the Fantasy Football Advice Network here on May 1st, just like we promised last week. Thank you all for joining. You can find us now at FF Advice Network on YouTube. If you're following us at Operation Domination, we're still on every podcast platform available. You didn't have to do anything there, but if you're just now tuning into the show, search Operation Domination anywhere you like to listen to download our latest episode. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mater. I got the full crew in the building: Chase Thornton, Adam LaRue, Chris Dowhauer. Of course, Adam and Chris and myself, fresh off of our trip from the H2 Public House in Cornelius, North Carolina, where we did the NFL draft last week. So it's only fitting that we should come in here and do a rookie mock draft, post-draft, because now we have what we've been looking for, the variables: location, real estate, and rookie mock drafts. The two things they have in similar. That's it. That's everything. So here we go. Guys, how we doing? Chase, Adam, Chris, what we doing tonight?
Ready to get this thing started, man. We made it. Top of the world, Mom. We're here on the Fantasy Football Advice Network. Debut. Ready to go.
Adam.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to talk some football again. It hasn't been too long, and I'll admit I definitely wish that I was talking some football back down there at the H2 Public House. But, nice consolation to be talking here post-draft.
It's always nice when they're picking up your bar tab for putting on a show at their bar. So, yeah, you can't really argue with that. Chris, how you doing?
Yeah, if the rest of us, unlike Chase, who don't live in a bar, that was a nice little setup that we had there. So I definitely shout out Charlotte. We really enjoyed ourselves, and we're glad to be back, though.
We are going to have somebody who's going to help us out today with our rookie mock draft. So let's get our guest introduced. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. He's the host of This Guy Sucks podcast, the one, the only, Mr. Chuck Bass.
What is there to say for that? Never in my whole life have I ever felt more appreciated and more undeserving. I kind of want to Pat McAfee the rest of the show and just stand up and vibe a little bit. I'm a little hyped after that, man.
You can do it with that handheld mic, man. You look like you're about to run an MC on an event.
Yeah. This is from when I used to MC middle school talent shows, but I've been banned from doing that, at least locally. So I'd much rather be with you guys.
They took you off the local telethon circuit. Yeah.
Yeah, something about character concerns. I don't know. That's why I fell in the draft also.
Well, we're glad to have you and to keep you away from middle schools at the same time. Two birds, one stone. But we do have a rookie mock draft to get to today. We're going to go 5 rounds. We have a couple of listeners who joined with us, so hopefully they're actually there and watching along. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. Chuck, you are right there at the top at number 3. This is a super flex 5-round rookie mock draft. So 2 minutes, Chuck, you're on the clock while you make your pick. Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, first 2 picks off the board. That has been pretty much consensus, right, guys? Chase?
Yeah, I mean, especially since we're super flexual here. Quarterbacks are gold in this format, but Harrison is seems like such a generational transcendent talent that he's still going to be going in the top 3 almost every draft that you're doing, regardless of your scoring format, tight end premium, especially because there are no tight ends that are premium in this draft outside of Bowers. So yeah, Harrison going in the top 2 is definitely chalk.
Yeah, I would agree. Chuck, you steaming over there? You confused? You top guys went off the board. You don't know what to do?
This is actually ideal for me because I've pivoted real hard, real fast on the player that I'm about to take. I kind of sobered up a little bit. I had take lock all season long, and I don't know if it was for one particular reason or another. But if you guys want, I can go ahead and make this bad boy now.
Go ahead.
Give me the Jackrabbit. Give me some Jaden Daniels. I was really off of the Daniels train. Drake May was still my QB2 in the NFL draft. But just as far as, I started thinking about this in fantasy terms. Fantasy football is in my Twitter handle. I can't just be like, all of a sudden become the mechanics guy. Like, no, I'm points. So this guy, he is just, he's going to give you everything you want, even if his career doesn't last long. He's going to bomb it deep downfield. He's going to scramble outside the pocket as soon as someone's within distance to give him COVID. And he's super fast. He's going to do everything he can to run away from these guys. That's an ideal recipe for an elite fantasy football quarterback.
Yeah, I think the only question I think all of us have, and I was like you, I had Drake May as my QB2 as well, and Daniels as my number 4, actually. I had Penix at number 3 until he landed on the Falcons. I'm sure we'll get to that at some point tonight. But it's injury. That's my only thing. Lean frame. He doesn't slide. He takes on unnecessary hits. So if he's able to overcome that, yeah, he's a scrambler. There's weapons there. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Cliff Kingsbury, Brian Robinson got a decent running game to back him up. I love the draft pick of Luke McCaffrey later on.
Yeah, I even like the addition of Ben Sinnott. I think they're really going for speed. They're going to play to his strengths, intermediate and deep down the field passing. Rumors is that he's already reached out to AOC about potentially going out on a date, something like that. So he's intermingling in DC politics. I mean, this is everything you could want from your second overall pick. And I'm a vibes guy through and through, always will be. And it's hard to find something wrong with him from a vibes standpoint.
Yeah, I can tend to agree with that. Chase, you got 20 seconds, man. Make your pick.
Yeah, we're good. I got the pick here. I was waiting to let that all simmer down for a minute. But the way I'm looking at it, I purposely picked the 4th slot here because it's not my favorite spot to be in a draft this year. I agree with Chuck that Daniels, I like the points that he's going to give you now. I like the points he's going to give you in the future. But being a super flex format, if I'm picking 4th, I can assume safely that I didn't have a real great season last year. So, like I said, quarterbacks are gold in this format. Drake May, I don't like the landing spot for him. I don't like the landing spot for him this year, especially. I'm not going to get anything out of him right now. But down the road with his mechanics and getting to sit for a while behind a real professional like Jacoby Brissett, I think that there are better things in store for Drake May down the road. I'm willing to play the patience game and take Drake May in this format.
Real quick, Chase. You gotta be patient. I was gonna say real quick, Chase. You also don't forget he's a great athlete. I mean, people are excited about Jaden Daniels' athleticism, his running ability.
Yes, big time. You will still get some of the running quarterback residuals from him that people maybe don't think when they look at him. But he definitely is in my opinion, a better athlete and a better potential than JJ McCarthy. Even though JJ is going to give you more this year.
Yeah, and I'll pop in and say I really like that you brought up the talent and then let the situation kind of come. It was just last March that the Bears' starting wide receivers were Darnell Mooney and Dante Pettis, and now look at who they have. Was anybody talking about the Texans' wide receiving core a year ago, just before the draft? No, it was what can Nico Collins do for us? And now look at the embarrassment of riches. Same thing with the Rams. These things can flip overnight.
No, that's a valid point, Chuck. I look at the Patriots and I say, they haven't developed anybody since Tom Brady. Tom Brady was there for a very, very long time. This is true, but their wide receivers are going to be 2 rookies potentially as the lead guys, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker. It's a questionable situation, but I love Drake May's talent with you guys. Scrambler should be able to do it all the way around.
And Dan, he's got a real offensive coordinator. It's not a defensive coordinator or a special teams guy coach either.
Valid.
They got a GM, they got a coordinator. It's like a real football program there.
What are you gonna do? Adam, you go with Roma Dunze at the 1-6. That's something I've been seeing a lot of as of late too. Walk me through that decision there.
Yeah, to me, I mean, it's pretty much just, do I want Bowers or Odunze? I had a higher grade kind of going into the draft as an overall player on Odunze, so that's kind of where I'm gonna, air over to. McCarthy, definitely, like anytime you're in super flex, the next best quarterback has to be at least part of your consideration set. But for me, it was those two guys, and I'm definitely higher than consensus on Odunze. I love him. To me, had him closer to Harrison than I did to Neighbors. And I'm not worried about the landing spot. I mean, I have 1 year where maybe 2 max, where I have to deal with some really, really good wide receiver competition. But then past that, okay, cool. I have him locked into a quarterback that I believe is going to be a superstar and an offense that I expect to be incredibly efficient, incredibly pass happy. So I'm not worried about the landing spot.
Okay. I'm not either. You know why? Because they play with 3 receivers in the Shane Waldron offense. He's going to start on the perimeter of the outside. You'll have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. They'll be interchangeable from the flanker and slot positions. I mean, will the distribution of the targets maybe be a little bit less than you would like out of a guy that's expected to be an elite prospect in Roma Dunze? Yeah, sure. But it's only a matter of time. Keenan Allen's 32.
And the over-under on Keenan Allen's games played has to be like 12, right?
Literally just about to say that. Literally was just about to say that. Like,
It's not.
a breath away from blowing out the hammy anyway. So it may not even matter. So yeah, I like that pick a lot there, Adam. For me, I went with Brock Bowers. I took the 1-7. Chase, kind of to your point. The 1-7 seems to be a struggle for a lot of people right now, especially in super flex rookie leagues. Because what do? You take Brock Bowers or JJ McCarthy. That seems to be the decision to make there. And maybe this is part of me just hating on JJ McCarthy during the pre-process and tired of hearing about how he's a winner and he shows up in big games, even though he was built on a team that literally made him a game manager and nothing more. But whatever, that's besides the point. I do have to take in consideration that Nick Mullins was fantasy relevant for 2 weeks because of the amount of yards and touchdowns he was putting up within that offense. So there's an argument to be had here that even if you don't like JJ McCarthy long-term, like maybe I do, you can still probably trade him because of super flex rookie league at a quarterback. You can get a tall task for him if he has just a couple of good games. That's all fair. But the one thing in Dynasty in particular that seems to be incredibly difficult is to get that mismatch at the tight end position. And I don't know if Brock Bowers is going to be in the top, I would say 8 his rookie year. Probably not, with Gardner Minshew having to split the share with Devontae Adams and some of the things going on there. But I do know within the next probably couple years, Brock Bowers is going to definitely be in the top 5. And if you don't have one of those guys, it's very difficult, I think more difficult to find that mismatch at the tight end position. So that's where my process thinking is. That's why I go with Brock Bowers to the 1-7. What do you think, Chuck?
No, I love it. I think you're looking at a guy who is going to be the leading target earner on this team within probably 3 years. They have no ties to anybody else in the offense long term. They said everything they need to say about Michael Maher with the pick of Brock Bowers. And this is a team that, they really, a lot of people, I see stuff, they should have gone quarterback or they should have gone defense. They had a top 10 defense last year, which is crazy to think about. It's not a team flooded with blue chip players. They needed the best player available. This is a guy that allows them to have the flexibility that you see. One of the commonalities amongst all these teams that make deep playoff runs or have high scoring offenses mainly is that they have a tight end that is capable of playing all over the field and reining in short, intermediate, and deep targets. And he's a day one guy. I mean, I love the pick, truly. I think he's starting to get undervalued.
I like that. We got some people in the comments arguing about Roma Dunze, whether or not he'll be a bust. Somebody brought up a good point here, the JSN point. That's something I've heard about a lot through these rookie mock drafts. It's about JSN and how everyone's disappointed. And again, we pointed out with Roma Dunze, you may not get that elite status year 1 because of the target distribution, but it's year 2 we're looking at. Keenan Allen's an old guy. Like, he's not going to be hanging around forever. It's not JSN in the sense that Tyler Lockett couldn't go anywhere. Go ahead, Chris.
And JSN plays the slot. Roma Dunze does not play the slot. And I think there's a big difference in that offense. We talked about the guys that they feature in this offense. The outside receivers, a la Mike Evans, a la DK Metcalf. Who does Roma Dunze pair best with outside of Keenan Allen, DJ Moore? He is the X in this offense. He's going to be outside. I think he's going to be a boom factor. He's going to see a lot of single coverage as well.
Yeah, I can't disagree. Chris, why don't you walk me through your pick there, Lad McConkey?
Yeah, so I was sitting looking at what you did, and I was hoping that Brock Bowers would fall to me because I 100% agree with you. I think it's always key to have the rarity in the position in the sense, and tight ends when something, not all people have good ones, and Brock Bowers is an outstanding one. So that left me with kind of an option. J.J. McCarthy is already off the board. Oh, similar to you, I would have had to consider taking him because the offense is really good, but I'm a hater as well. So I'm excited that I could take my other guy that I like a lot in this receiver court, as Lad McConkey. There's not a lot of mouths to feed in Los Angeles right now for the Chargers. And one of the guys who moved on, Keenan Allen, has a lot of similar skill sets to Lad McConkey. We saw Justin Herbert hook him with the ball. As long as Keenan Allen was healthy, Keenan Allen saw the ball. So I think when it comes to me, I like Lad McConkey both now and his upside for down the road.
Okay, love that. So that way, a couple more picks come off the board. Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas, Bo Nix. We did do this as a snake draft as if it would be a rookie startup mock. Obviously we're fresh here. And the guy went Bo Nix and Michael Penix back to back on the flip side. Again, super flex. You're going for quarterback. I don't hate that in this situation. And you have one quarterback who is going to start right away, but then you also have Michael Penix. And I did a whole write up on this where we might be 2027, barring an injury, before we see this guy play. Chuck, you were talking about this pre-show. What was your reaction to Penix and the Atlanta Falcons?
My reaction is the shirt that I'm wearing right now. It's the best pick I've ever seen in my life by any organization, in any way, shape, or form. The issue with Penix and Nix is I just don't think they had enough experience. I would have loved to see them go back to school for one more year and really, get those reps in because they're just too. They're just not long enough in the tooth for me.
That's fantastic.
That might take a while to sink in with some in some of the audience there. But when they're my age.
My big knock on the Penix thing was I think it's just bad process. This is obviously a guy that they've known for a while. They're going to be able to get an 8. So to find out, the reports about how Kirk Cousins is shocked and, just no leaks whatsoever, had there not been Kirk Cousins there, I could talk myself into this guy, winning them over with charisma and experience and everything. But man, it's just painful, but this is dynasty. We're playing the long haul here. And, you got to take the shots where you can. It's a loaded offense.
It's just borderline because, like, Adam, you talk about this all the time. When we're playing Dynasty, you're playing 2 to 3 years out. It literally might be year 4 by the time we see Penix take the field if everything goes right with Kirk Cousins. So that makes it a little rough.
They're going to have to make a decision on his 5th-year option before he maybe even starts a game for him.
Yeah.
It's just such a ridiculous asset allocation there. It just
guys are so over the top on this. I think it's a good move, honestly.
Well, go ahead. Walk us through that and then take us to your
first of all, who do you guys want to take? Everybody's going to say they should take defensive player. Well, guess what? One didn't go to pick 15. So obviously that wasn't the best player on their board, number 8. Would they have moved down? They had opportunity, possibly. But if they have the second best quarterback on their board, and you look at all these different franchises they're trying to not be, such as, for example, let's look at the Jets. The Jets paid Aaron Rodgers a lot of money, but they also had a number 2 draft pick on their team, a la Wilson, who's supposed to sit last year, and everybody's okay with that. But Wilson got traded. He didn't play played early because Aaron Rodgers went down. What was the fourth snap of the series. So what you have basically is the wash for the Jets, where if it happens to Kirk Cousins, who's coming off an ACL surgery, is 36 years old, you're still rolling if you're Atlanta, and you're not going to be up in the top 10 anytime soon. Hopefully, where you are as a franchise. So to get back there in 2 years is almost an impossibility. You saw how much they're offering just to get to the pick 3. Minnesota offered 3 number 1s and still got turned down. So if you're Atlanta, it's actually good allocation of assets, in my opinion.
Chris, where I would fire back on that is that I wouldn't have had him take defense. I would have had him take Rome Odunze and put him on the other side of Drake London because your other guy is Mac Hollins. That's what I would have done. That would help you win now and fire up the offense with you're strengthening up to begin with an elite
with
player.
Pitts, with Robinson.
Should have done.
Yeah, I co-sign that 1,000%. And I think, Chris, to your credit, what they're trying to do is guarantee that they're not bad at any point. They kind of did the Desmond Ridder thing. They did the Marcus Mariota thing. They're throwing as many darts as they can at the position to guarantee that this is something that they don't have to terribly worry about. My problem, I get that line of thought. I guess my problem is just the actual pick itself. I would have preferred a JJ McCarthy, or maybe I wouldn't have preferred a Bo Nix. But just the way they went about it specific, I like the process is strange, but the pick is even stranger to me.
All right, well, Chris, we'll get back to you. You took Trey Benson at the 204. Walk us through that idea.
Yeah, I was going to see if Michael Penix would fall, but since he did not, I still don't have a quarterback. I'm not thrilled, upset I lost Bo Nix. So I went with my next best option for me on the board. Want to get another running back. I think Benson's one of those guys. I know he's getting, got to split time initially, but you saw Aaron Jones have a nice role in Green Bay. I think there's nice, it's only a matter of time until Benson gets more carries. I'm sorry, he's not in Green Bay, he's in Carolina. But I like what he's upside he brings to the table. I think Benson's one of those 3-down backs in this draft.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Look, everyone has Jonathan Brooks because he likely could be the starter in Carolina, but I don't like the fit. I don't like the situation. You still have other guys like Chuba Hubbard who are going to take away some touches there. He's coming off the ACL injury. We know James Conner, first of all, talk about guys who are a breath away from getting injured, but this has to be his last season anyway. And Trey Benson profiles somebody who can step in and give you exactly what James Conner gave you with potentially more speed once that takes over. So I'm okay, and I still have Trey Benson as my number one running back, actually, even post-draft over Jonathan Brooks, because I'm just not loving the Carolina situation. Speaking of, go to my pick here, and I took Blake Corum, other running backs, one of the last running backs on the board. So we got to this point here where there was going to be a huge tier drop-off on running backs who have situational opportunities to play early or into very base starters by their second year. Kyron Williams, we saw last year, 5 games missed with a high ankle sprain. We know the Rams, if there's a running back they fall in love with, that they'll quickly fall out of love with and then go to the next guy. That could easily be a situation here with the Los Angeles Rams, Blake Corum and Kyron Williams. And we know Corum, for his size, is really good in the red zone. So it doesn't really matter that he's a little bit undersized here. And exactly like Kyron Williams. So if Kyron gets hurt, their plan is to ride Blake Corum, and you're not really attached to Kyron Williams. Blake Corum might prove to be better than Kyron Williams. There certainly was a better combine athlete than Kyron Williams was. So it's not too far-fetched to think Blake Corum could be the next best flash Rams running back. And we all know that when the Rams do decide to go with one guy, he's typically a top 10 running back in fantasy football. So, yeah, I like the Blake Corum pick here at 2-6. Adam, you went with Jermaine Burton at 2-7. So walk me through that one.
Yeah, I really like Jermaine Burton as a player overall. He was someone who, I had him in my top 50 for sure overall, regardless of position. It wasn't quite a first-round grade for me, but I really, really like Jermaine Burton. And kind of the theme between my first 3 picks, which we'll get to the third one, when we've wrapped around, but definitely my top 2 is I have weapons who I liked, and they're tied to really, really good quarterbacks. And for me, I don't know, I got my landing spot. I'm not necessarily hurt about the draft capital on Burton. Yeah, I think it's a good fit, and I think he's someone who can play early, he can find a spot, and once T is gone, which I think is more a matter of time, whether it's this year or next offseason, I think he's going to have a really big role for a quarterback who's willing to throw the ball down the field.
Yeah, can't disagree with anything you just brought down there. He needs to take over T. Higgins, I think, is ultimately going to be the question for next season. Because if for whatever reason they decide to bring T. Higgins back, or that doesn't wind up happening, then he's, to me, a slot receiver who's more of a vertical seam stretcher. I was on tape last week talking about how I don't like he doesn't have any wiggle really in his game and his route running. I don't know if he's more than a one-trick pony, so if he doesn't get to play the outside at some point, I don't know how much volume we're really looking at for Jermaine Burton if that doesn't happen. But you're taking a home run swing with a good quarterback, which should be a good offense. So from that standpoint, can't really argue with it too much either. Chase, we get back to you. You take a Donnie Mitchell at the 209.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have him fall to me there. You guys remember I was high on him when we did our draft preview with the receivers there. I like the way that he complements the other guys on their receiving core there. I'm really excited to see what he can do. I think he's got the potential to be an excellent professional wide receiver there. I like the way that he presses his leverage and runs his routes. And like I said, I think he's going to complement very well what Pittman does, what Josh Downs does. I'm thrilled to get him there and have him there. And then I wrap around, take Javon Baker. Hopefully he can grow with my guy, my quarterback, Drake May there. Like I said, I've got time to be patient because I'm picking fourth in this draft for a reason, supposedly. So,
well, you might as well get the combo. Why not? Play this like a best ball rookie draft. Nothing wrong with that. Look, there's a lot of people making an argument.
I have to ask.
Go ahead, Chuck.
I have to ask. So you all heard about the character concern issues with Mitchell, right? That was kind of like one of the things that came up. And There was obviously the GM tirade. Did you hear what the character issues were? Did anybody check that out? Because if you haven't, I've got a direct quote here. When his blood sugar's off, he's rude, he's abrasive, and he doesn't pay attention. But when his stuff is normal and they get him lunch by a normal time, he's out there with great energy, best practice, loves football. That was the character concern issues for A.D. Mitchell.
Well, he's playing for Indianapolis. He's not playing for Cincinnati, the team that doesn't feed their guys. So he should be fine there. He should be well fed. He should have plenty of money to buy himself a sandwich. I'm good to go with that.
Yeah, on this sponsorship ASAP. I'm be disappointed.
To add on to that, I was reading because I had heard that, and it was speculated that both the combine and a lot of the pre-draft stuff, those interviews are in the morning. And if you have type 1 diabetes, that's typically when you haven't eaten, when your sugars haven't adjusted to the levels they need to be at. So the teams that brought them into their building, typically later in the day, those teams liked him. And then the teams that interviewed him at the combine, 7 a.m., hasn't eaten because he's trying to, be light for testing. Those teams hated him. That's kind of what I forget who said that on ESPN today, but I was like, okay, I can see how some of those things came out, kind of to your point.
Journalism I get behind right there. Well done. That's some tidbits that I like to take with me. That's good stuff.
Let's move here. We got Chuck. We got you. We got Jalen Polk. He went with the Patriots wide receiver. We were just talking about them. So with the 210, what are you seeing with Polk that you like more than, let's say, I don't know, a Roman Wilson or a Troy Franklin that went after you?
So Polk was kind of a hedge for me on not taking May, kind of betting on that future there. I just like how his game's going to translate pretty quickly. I like his fit with Alex Van Pelt's scheme. His weaknesses are not something that really the offense is going to rely a lot on. He's not really terribly explosive. He's not incredible at yak, but he does have a freak catch radius. He's an excellent route runner, and he's really good at boxing out these cornerbacks when he gets to these top of these routes. And so if May takes any time to develop, which, we expect him to maybe need a little bit of adjustment, hopefully not too much. This is a quarterback's best friend, a guy that, you can just throw it to a la like a Mike Evans. So I just like that. Not terribly confident in what the Patriots are building as an organization, but I like the fit. I would have taken Mitchell, but I got sniped. So I have to put that out there a little bit as well. It's just a little bit of behind the scenes, a little bit of process for you guys. But yeah, I like Polk. Feel good.
Them's the breaks. Well, why don't you just keep going? Because then he came back with Malachi Corley in the third round.
I'm not going to be the guy who didn't draft the next Deebo Samuel, as I've been told by 100,000 people online all day, every day. But really, this is an opportunity play. You look at Garrett Wilson, and obviously he's an alpha's alpha there. But after that, it's a hodgepodge of guys over the next little bit of time. I just think that they're pretty good at identifying offensive talent in the Jets, except for, the quarterback position. But otherwise than that, they seem to have an eye for guys who are really good in space. They have an eye for guys who can kind of break into the second, third layers on some of these routes and, really do explosive things after the catch. And I'm all about that life. So give me the fun guys.
Yeah, look, third round, no issue with it, with Malachi Corley taking a shot on it. But I'm kind of with you with the sarcasm on, like, everyone comparing him to Deebo Samuel, which, first of all, he's a very light version of Deebo Samuel. Just want to point that out there. And even if you think he is Deebo Samuel, you're depending on Nathaniel Hackett to be smart enough and creative enough to use him in a way that makes him effective with yards after the catch. That in and of itself, I think, implodes any opportunity that he could turn into a Deebo Samuel. But you're absolutely right. After Garrett Wilson, there's absolutely an opening for a second wide receiver with what hopefully would be an Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, I have no problem with taking a shot like that in the third round. So Chase, we get to you. You took Javon Baker at the 3-4. This is where you got the combo with Drake May and Baker. Some people have talked about how they think Baker is going to be better than Jalen Polk, even though Polk has been continuously going ahead in rookie mock drafts. So walk me through the Javon Baker pick.
Well, that's been a lot of the talk I've been hearing. Listen, again, I'm not crazy about the situation meaning a wide receiver drafted by the New England Patriots. That's always been a real safe bet for the last 2.5 decades. But like I said, I've got time to be patient as he grows with May there, like I said. And I think he and Polk complement each other well. Again, I think they did a good job of taking two guys that they can both get on the field at the same time here and that have a chance to, again, grow with May. I think this new regime realizes they have to be in it for the long haul. There are no quick fixes in New England, the way that things look around there right now. So, I'm going to bet on the system, bet on, the process, like they did in Philadelphia there in the NBA. I'm going to bet on the process, take my time.
Jeez,
and he's a receiver.
Real quick. I have to, Adam, I have to do it to you. All weekend long last week, Adam, I think he must have said trust the process like 50,000 times. Like we could have made a drinking game off of how many times Adam said process last weekend. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but I had to throw that out there a little bit behind the scenes what was going on last week.
Well, and a callback, because if you did watch the show from the H2 Public House in Cornelius, North Carolina, you definitely heard me say process about 35 different times in 35 different contexts. So I'm definitely with you there.
So I had to point that out there. Adam, we got you. You went with Eric All, one of my sleeper tight ends there in the third round with the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's an Iowa tight end. How can you go wrong with an Iowa tight end?
Hey, I got an Iowa tight end with Joe Burrow. I mean, I can pretty much chalk my talking time with that, but I think he's going to get an opportunity a little bit earlier than a lot of other tight ends. And look, it's in the third round. I'm not going to be too harsh on a guy for injury stuff, and that to me is what puts him. He'd obviously be below Bowers, but in terms of having another tight end taken before him, I think he would be definitely consensus tight end too if he didn't have injury issues, and they exist. But by the time I hit the third round, I'm just going to watch the tape and be like, I have this guy in Joe Burrow. If I can get a couple healthy seasons out of it, then I'm feeling like that was a third round home run. I really like what he's put on tape. He's a good player.
Well, let me just point this out there real quick, because you took him over Jatavian Sanders, who obviously has more draft capital than Eric All did. He just went 2 spots later on in this rookie mock draft by Team 8 there. So what did you like about Eric All more so than Jatavian Sanders?
I had them in a tier as prospects. So for me, it comes down to tiebreaker, which, exactly. My tiebreaker within my process is landing situation. And I'm sorry, but give me Joe Burrow 1,000 times out of 1,000 before I touch a Bryce Young. Just being honest. And again, I think they got pretty similar situations in the ability to get on the field pretty early. I don't mind Sanders. Sanders is definitely someone who I would happily take in the third round to walk away with and be pretty good, because I do think that there's a role for him in that offense pretty quick. But I slightly preferred All as a player, and I definitely prefer the landing spot. So for me, it was no brainer.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. It's a good thing we got out of Carolina with our heads intact, because we were not loving the Carolina picks that night in Cornelius, North Carolina. That's for sure. I went with Luke McCaffrey, and for a couple of reasons. One, the third round, it's rare you're going to find a player who's going to pay dividends for you year one in the third round, especially the back end of the third round. This is the 307 pick here anyway. But Luke McCaffrey, it's not just the lineage. It's the fact that he's raw as a wide receiver and yet was as productive as he was, especially in the red zone down there at Rice. We have seen struggles of Jahan Dotson getting open against man coverage, but maybe even more importantly, just being available in general for Jahan Dotson has been an issue. If you think they drafted their franchise quarterback in Jaden Daniels, there's reason to hope on that. I think he will be potentially one of the third receivers when they do go 21 personnel already this year anyway. And there's a potential that I think he could beat out Jahan Dotson by year 2. I think there's a real question for that. So yeah, I like the Luke McCaffrey pick. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on that.
No, I Luke McCaffrey, he tested well. We know he's got the athleticism. Obviously, he's got the bloodline in that. I think he fell into a decent situation. I think he fell into about the best situation he probably could have there. They're looking for receivers in Los Angeles. We know that. They're out their top two guys from the past several years between Williams and Allen. They're going to be looking for guys. And yes, they've still got Palmer. And yes, Quentin Johnston is still an unknown in theory. But I like the situation he fell into. I think he's got the athleticism. I think he can play in this league.
Thank you, Chris?
I thought you were talking about my player I have on the chart.
I was talking about Brendan Rice. Wait a minute. Who are we? Wait a minute.
We're talking about Luke McCaffrey. I don't know where any of you people went. You guys went all
Listen, I jumped forward to Brendan Rice, but Luke McCaffrey tested well. Luke McCaffrey, I'm not as crazy about the idea of him leapfrogging Jahan Dotson, but I like the idea that, like you said before, 3 receivers play in this league. Offenses, they're going to play 3 receivers. I think Luke McCaffrey can make something of it. I'm not worried about that at all.
Okay.
I got mixed up on your picks, Dan, because I like your damn picks.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But let's try to stay focused here, Chris. Focus on Theo Johnson. That's who we're focusing on. Theo Johnson. Do you want to make your pick first? Because you're on the board. Oh, he made his pick anyway. Go ahead.
There it is.
So talk about
so I went with Theo Johnson because I think I look at, is Darren Waller going to retire? Is he not going to retire? Is he going to retire? Let's be real. He's hanging on by a thread even if he does come back. When I look at the rest of this receiving core, I'm not sure if there's anybody over 6 foot, the rest of the receiving core. So when we get the red zone, Daniel Jones got to throw it to somebody. I like Theo Johnson now. And I also like when they get their new quarterback next year. So I like his athleticism, his talent, and the opportunity to just play pretty early as a tight end makes me a Theo Johnson guy in the 3rd round. And I was hoping, honestly, Malachi Corley would fall to me, actually.
The 3rd round, yeah, that's exactly where we want to take a sleeper pick on that. But Bass got you on the flippity flop. Speaking of the flippity flop, Chris, let's just stay with you. Malik Washington, you, sir, sniped me here because while I wound up with Brendan Rice, Malik Washington is who I was hoping was going to fall to me. So talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, so I went with my other guy who I like is a jack of all trades. You can hand him the ball, you can throw him the ball. This is the leading receiver in the NCAA last year. Washington was a beast for Virginia. He's a 5'8" little bowling ball. I like him in the fitness offense as well. I know they have Waddle. I know they have Tyreek, but they still need a 3rd receiver to kind of be involved. They have a guy that can do a little bit underneath, a guy who Tua can kind of drop it down to in option routes, and a guy can take you over the top in the slot. So I like the opportunity for him to kind of take this up over Barrios moving forward, and I think he's going to be a starter sooner than later for Miami.
I agree with that. Look, whether it's Tyreek Hill retiring, whatever the case may be, Jalen Waddle was banged up last year. Malik Washington's a freak in the middle, and he's a perfect fit for that offense with his athleticism. They don't care about size. Tyreek Hill's small. Jalen Waddle's not the tallest giant in the world either. They just care about quickness, and McDaniels knows how to use it. So I love that pick. You forced me to go Brendan Rice, twisted my arm. I look at Brendan Rice in the 4th round. Like, why can't you be Josh Palmer sooner rather than later? And why can't you be the Chargers' number 2 receiver sooner rather than later? Because you're talking about Josh Palmer. We don't know what we're going to get out of Quentin Johnson. We know Ladd McConkey is likely to be the lead guy just based off of his talent alone. But someone's going to have to play second fiddle. Let's say, year 2, year 3. You'll have a good quarterback. I have been on record saying I don't know if Justin Herbert is going to surpass 500 pass attempts with Greg Roman as the offensive coordinator, but somebody else besides one guy is going to have to catch the ball. And the only caveat I have right now with the Chargers offense is that they don't have a Mark Andrews. They don't have that tight end that they have to give all those targets to. So you're going to give it to probably 2 receivers instead. And I don't know if it's going to be year 1, but by year 2, Brendan Rice, I think he's already a professional level receiver, which is pretty much how I look at Josh Palmer, but younger. So that's why I think by year 2, he could be a pick there. That's why I like him in the 4th round pick. Adam, you can give me a little feedback on that if you want to, then talk about your Audric Estime in your 407.
Yeah, no, I was not nearly as high on Brendan Rice as you were, but I got to admit, like, we were texting back and forth. We traveled together back on Saturday, and when we had just split up, it was about the time he was getting picked, and we were texting back and forth while you were on the train. I was in my Uber, and I believe he got picked there, and it is a fantastic landing spot, suffice to say. So while I wasn't, the biggest supporter of the player, maybe the biggest fan, I guess, it's a great landing spot. As far as Estime, look, he's a running back who I liked a lot more than consensus. I think he's a really good player. I think he's a starter in this league. And he got picked to a team whose primary running back is someone who was picked by, a previous, not necessarily regime, but previous head coach. And the starting running back there was sub 4 yards per carry last season. Obviously, first year coming off injury. And I do expect Javonte to have a better season kind of moving forward. But I do think for a running back who will project to have had like one, what we would call successful season on his rookie contract, I don't know that he's necessarily a lock to stay with Denver. And then I think from that point moving forward, I could have a starter in Estime. So he's a player I liked in the late 4th round to have someone who I can project to be a starter as soon as next year and be a quality one, I think, and someone who can play on, a bunch of different situations. He's not the best receiver in the world, but he can pass block. So I think he can work his way to third downs. I like his ability as an upside pick, both red zone and, potentially being a Ramondre type where you're a sneaky receiver.
Well, who does he play for?
Denver.
No, who did he play for?
Notre Dame.
Who do you like?
Homer pick.
Yeah. I don't think it's a homer pick in the 4th round.
No, just a little bit.
You're not claiming he's going to be a Hall of
Picks in the
Famer.
4th round.
Adam likes running backs for unfortunate. It's okay. It happens. It happens to all of us. No, I'm just busting your chops there. Like Javonte Williams might not be long for the Denver Broncos. It's quite possible. And we know Sean Payton, whether it's a Mark Ingram type, Adrian Peterson back in the day, he's always had that one power back that he's turned to. Maybe there's a possibility in the 4th round to estimate could potentially be that guy potentially in year 2, maybe year 1 of Javonte were to get hurt again. So from that standpoint, 4th round, not too bad there. Chase, you also went with a running back in the 4th.
Yeah, just because it's dynasty, just because I'm, for purposes of the exercise here, I'm in a rebuild, doesn't mean you can't take a running back. I'd rather take running backs that I find in decent spots than questionable receivers that I'm not sure if they're going to, if they're not going to hit the field or see a whole lot of usage ever. Garendo, being a Badger fan, I watched him for the early part of his career before he transferred to Louisville here. He's got great size. We know he's got great speed. He tested great at the combine there. He can do a little bit of everything. He can take that role. I think that he takes over sooner rather than later for Eli Mitchell. I liked Eli Mitchell early in his career. But Eli Mitchell, like so many others, doesn't seem to be able to stay healthy very much. Playing behind Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey seems to have shaken that injury bug for the most part that he kind of got labeled with a couple years ago. It's a great situation. If McCaffrey does miss time, or if McCaffrey moves on, or when McCaffrey moves on someday, I know you don't want to talk about that, Dan, but Garendo's got possibility there to be able to step in and find a role in an offense that could be very friendly to him scoring some fantasy points. So I like that, and I'm willing to take a shot on that, like I said, over some receivers that I personally have questions about.
You know how many years in a row I've heard people say that they want to take a shot on the 3rd or 4th round draft pick who's a running back by the San Francisco 49ers, and how often that's worked out?
They're all the 49er the Eagle practice squad.
For real.
I'll get him eventually.
You do. You get the Colts
Give it
eventually.
3 or 4 years.
If he doesn't work out, great. It helps my draft pick for next season. So who cares?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yes, it's the 4th round. It's not a big deal, but at the same time, yeah, I've heard that line so many times for running backs drafted by the 49ers in the 3rd, 4th round, and it's always the guy who either wasn't drafted or was taken in the 6th and 7th round. I wouldn't be surprised if Cody Schrader, who they signed as an undrafted free agent, winds up being better than Isaac Garendo, because that just seems to be the trend of Kyle Shanahan. Like the less you know, the better he's going to wind up being as a running back on there.
He is the most talented of these guys they drafted the last few years, Dan. Though he actually has talent, unlike they try to stretch for the other guys they grabbed.
And I mean, look what happened with Trey Sermon and Eli Mitchell. Mitchell ended up being, a guy for fantasy purposes. He was a guy when he was pressed into duty, when he had the starting role for a while. It's a running back friendly system, and Garendo's got speed. He's got size. He's playing behind a guy who has missed time in his career with injuries. If he gets in there, I like his shot as well as anybody else. So, especially at this point in the draft.
Athleticism, no doubt about it. Definitely tantalizing. I don't think he, as an athlete, is much different than Tyrion Davis-Price. What makes him different than Tyrion Davis-Price is the fact that he's actually a good pass catcher and good on third downs. So that's going to be the saving grace for him, and that's become a requirement in San Francisco. Let's get back to Chuck here for some back-to-back picks. So you took the guy I would like to take in this situation in the late 4th round territory. I've actually had a couple rookie drafts where he fell in the 5th, and I was able to grab him there. And that's Dylan Wabe, who I think fell in a perfect situation for a guy like that to actually have a pathway to opportunity. So talk to me about the Wabe pick here in the 4th-10.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm getting a poor man's Austin Eckler here. And this is, like you said, you talked about the landing spot. You talked about the pairing with Zamir White. And, I mean, the best thing a running back in a running back room specifically can have as an indicator of future success is signing Alexander Madison. So you know that this is going to be a fast track right to the good stuff. And I just like what he's going to be able to bring from them. I like the kind of they're pulling together. They're kind of doing an infinity gauntlet thing with all the different guys that they're pulling together in different kind of skill sets. And I just like his ability. You know, he excels at the system that they're going to be trying to run. And he's just going to be a breath of fresh air. I don't expect a high ceiling from him. I don't expect a takeover. I just expect a nice slotted role, and slotted pretty early, actually.
I agree. Look, Zamir White is not the best pass catcher in the world. And Alexander Madison, we know he can't do much of anything anyway. I wouldn't be surprised. Tom Telesco, wasn't it Danny Woodhead he brought in over the Chargers at one point? Does that not remind you of Loabe? So I'm with you, man. That's why I like to pick here, especially when we get later into our rookie drafts. And then you came back with Johnny Wilson, who got drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles with your 5th round pick.
Yeah, this is just where I'm just a sucker. I got to make a measurables pick here at some point. And this was definitely in the 5th round. I am. There's no doubt about it. Especially when you're looking at 6-foot Devonta Smith and 6'1" AJ Brown, which obviously they play bigger than that. But you know, you bring in Mr. 6'6", 6'7", 4'5". You know, guys with his profile don't have a track record of really succeeding long term in the league. That's why I like him in a non-pressure situation as a wide receiver 3. I don't expect them to convert him to tight end, but if they do, hey, Darren Waller potential. So I love offenses that feel like they're always squeezing the most juice out of these guys. Even if they don't burn for long, they burn bright for short amount of time. They have some work to do in Philadelphia. They need to kind of find themselves a little bit more. I expect this offense to evolve. They bring in Kellen Moore, which I do have mixed feelings about, but it's definitely a signal towards trying to, you know, stop the ship from sinking. So I just like, I don't want to say vibes and I don't want to say direction because I hate the Eagles and I want to see them fail, but I understand the process.
I am 100% with you, Chuck. By the way, not only wanting to see the Eagles fail, because that's definitely, as a 49ers fan, that's definitely up there for me. They need to stay down so I can stay up. But I also love the mixed feelings on Kellen Moore. Elaborate a little bit on that because I want to see if we're on the same page as to why that is, because I also have mixed feelings about Kellen Moore with this situation.
Yeah, he seems to have stopped evolving his offense, and I think that he started to fall into sort of a square peg in a round hole situation. I just thought that, you know, his progress as a play caller was going to be more linear, and it seems like he's kind of reverted into the trap that a lot of these old guys do, which is almost like the Madden spam button, you know, the hurry up kind of thing. But I don't know if he's waiting if this is going to be a Cinderella shoe fit scenario or what. You hated to see what happened with Dallas continuing to play at the high level, if not better, with his departure. I was really excited for the upgrade over Joe Lombardi, who I thought was basically the same. Everything I just said about Kellen Moore is what I said about Joe Lombardi when they hired Kellen Moore, and so I hate to fall back into that same trap. But you know, they were pretty open and candid about how the lack and the reason for the lack of success in the offense in Philadelphia last year. So we'll see how this ball bounces.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of there with you where I look at it from a pure Jalen Hurts perspective, where there's a stark contrast in Hurts' performance as a quarterback when he's plus 31 pass attempts and when he's 31 or under in pass attempts. And Kellen Moore has not been the guy to want to run first. I mean, it's a whole reason why him and Mike McCarthy didn't get along, and he bounced out to the Chargers to begin with. There's been a lot of conflict there, and I don't know if he's going to be able to rein that aspect in and be balanced and that play to Jalen Hurts' strength. It's why I have mixed feelings about it. At the same time, you have A.J. Brown, you have Devonta Smith, you have Jalen Hurts, you have Saquon Barkley. You still have an above-average, probably top 10 offensive line, even without Jason Kelce when healthy. It's hard to screw it up. So and when we see Kellen Moore, when he's down on offenses, be prolific. So it's a very mixed bag situation. I totally agree with you. Chase, you went with Tyrone Tracy. I love this pick here with the Giants because he's got some sneaky upside.
Yeah, again, like I said, a late round pick, but running back who fell into a situation where he could find himself with a role, with a job sooner rather than later. Devin Singletary, every time people count him out, he seems to bounce back and actually remain fantasy relevant. He's a top 24 type player at his position usually, but Tyrone Tracy, yeah, I like his chances as good as anybody else at this point in the draft of being able to find himself with a role on an offense. We don't know how good that offense is going to be necessarily, but a guy who's got a chance to be a starter here within the first 2 years at this point in the draft for a rebuilding team, I'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, it's Devin Singletary, and who knows? So, yeah,
right.
Take a shot on a guy who could wind up actually giving you a few weeks here. Maybe you can even sell high on him if he does come in and play for a few weeks in Dynasty. Adam, you took Aeneas Smith, Texas A&M wide receiver who wound up being drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles in the 5th round. So that's a name I don't see on these rookie mock drafts very often. So walk me through that one.
Yeah, so I mean, part of it is great pick, Chase, because he was someone who to me is a lock in the 5th and someone who I was definitely looking to take there if I could get my hands on him. But for me, I think it's a lot similar to the arguments, Chuck, that you had for Johnny Wilson. And just, I think Aeneas Smith is going to, I like his odds, if it's coming to that last roster spot and it's Wilson or Aeneas Smith, I like Smith because I think he's going to be the special teamer between the two. I think he's going to be the one that, potentially punt returns, kick returns, probably find a way, maybe not necessarily as a gunner, but I think I like his odds to sneak onto the back end of the roster if it comes down that way. If, a Devontae Parker and some of these other veteran guys, Paris Campbell, push these, later round rookies a little bit down. I like his odds to hang on from special teams. And then it just becomes kind of exactly what you were saying, guy who I like the traits. There's some things that I like. There's a reason he fell to the 5th round. But there's some traits that I appreciate, and it's going to a really good offense. So those are kind of my key 3 things. I like some traits. He's on a really good offense, and I like his viability to make a roster.
I got to be honest with you. I completely forgot Devontae Parker was even on the Philadelphia Eagles roster until you just said that. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. He did sign there. Talk about a guy who needs to go the hell away.
Yeah. I wish everybody else would forget him, too.
I said I wish I could forget.
Yeah. No,
it's so weird. We have a question here. Have the 103 in a 12-team super flex league. Only quarterbacks are Watson and Carr. Daniels and May both have red flags that scare me. Am I crazy to take Neighbors because I view him as the safer pick? Chuck, you want to field this question?
I'm actually having a little trouble reading the question on my scene. I'm sorry. Can I get it? Is that? Oh, sorry, I've got it in the chat over here. Is that the 103 in a 12-team superflex?
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
He has the 103 in a 12-team superflex. His only QBs are Watson and Carr, so he doesn't have any QBs. Daniels and May both have red flags that scare me. Am I crazy to take Neighbors as I view him as the safer pick? It's not necessarily that you're crazy because Neighbors is, there's a lot of talk about how these elite wide receivers are flooding the league year in, year out. Neighbors would have been the number 1 pick in any draft going back the last 10 years, other than maybe the Jamar Chase draft, that wide receiver that is. So he's definitely an elite blue chip talent. You're not crazy, but with Watson and Carr, those are guys who might not even be the starting quarterback on their team a year, 2 years from now. I would take Daniels. I would take Jaden Daniels, or I would take Drake May. I absolutely would. I feel strongly about both of those guys. Their future in the league, hammer that.
Yeah, the same person you came back with. I also have the 112 and the 202. So I target Bo Nix or Michael Penix with those. The problem is, especially in your super flex league, it's not a given. Maybe Penix, but it's not a given. Bo Nix is even going to be around, and you're desperate for a quarterback position. And even if you get Penix, you need quarterback now. You talked about it. It might be a year or two. They're not even starting quarterbacks. Watson and Derek Carr. That is, it's like we said. It might be 3 years before we see Penix actually starting on the field. So, no, I'm with you. I'd stick there. I would probably take either Jaden Daniels or Drake May right now in the situation. Daniels,
I have to ask real quick, and this is a yay or a nay. Any Spencer Rattler fans in the house? What's up? Come on, where are you?
I'm the closest thing we got, I think, but not quite.
Let's go.
One thing I'll throw out there as a thought is if you are, you don't feel like May or Daniels, and I do, I would feel comfortable taking them there at the 3rd overall. But you could package your late first and your early second and potentially make it up into McCarthy territory and get Neighbors and McCarthy, and that is an alternative, option. We saw in this mock you went at 108. I think there's a couple of us that are a little lower than consensus on McCarthy, but I think if you make it to the 107, 106, maybe 108 is enough. You can kind of play it by ear, kind of in your draft, but somewhere in that territory, McCarthy is definitely a viable option. And if you pair Neighbors and McCarthy, that may be more to your liking.
That's an excellent point, Adam. You could definitely use those picks to move up and get yourself in a situation to potentially get both. All right, so to get back to the draft real quick, I took Jared Wiley, who was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs, athletic tight end, who maybe is the heir apparent after the 2-year extension that Travis Kelce just signed is up. And with the 5th round pick, I'm just taking somebody who might have upside 2 years down the road from here. That's what I'm looking at with Jared Wiley. Again, talk about the tight end position. I think it's a position that in Dynasty in particular is hard to get your hands on. So it's a position I am going to take shots, and I typically do in this 5th round, regardless of whether I took a tight end earlier. And you saw I took Brock Bowers in the 1st round. It didn't deter me here in any kind of way. And when you get to that 5th round, look, you're just taking shots. And that's just one of the shots that I want to take, pretty much plain and simple. So, Chris, you took Devontae Walker, another shot. I don't mind there in the 5th round. Talk about him.
Yeah, like you said, Dan, taking shots in the 5th round. The board's pretty cleaned. It was pretty picked pretty well with everybody's draft. So I'm looking at what guy has upside left on the board. Walker has some upside. You don't have a established receiving core in Baltimore right now. I know they're bringing back Rashad Bateman. You got Nelson Aguilar out there. OBJ is out, no longer there. Trey Flowers is an inside guy. So who's going to be on the outside guy to kind of stretch the field? Could be Walker. I'm a little bit down on him as his ability to consistently separate, his ability to kind of run routes cleanly, but he is explosive and he can run straight. And when he's out there, he's on his game, he can stretch the field with any best of them. So Lamar, if he can start pushing the ball down the field, it could be to Walker. So I'm going to the upside.
All right, I feel pretty good. Let me bring this back up here because we'll cap it on this. So you can't pick your own. All right, we'll go down the list here. Which one of us, and we can actually look at the listeners too who actually joined the draft. Which out of the people active in this draft would you guys give a top grade to? We'll go to Chuck first. He's our guest.
It's not funny because I don't want to give it to any of the autos, even though there's a couple auto teams, and I'm like, damn, they were sniping me on the reg. They were sniping me on the reg. I'm going to give it to – I actually really liked Chris's draft. I like the upside for a lot of his players and their path to targets. Walker was somebody I was actually looking at, even where I took Dylan Lobb. I thought there was somebody I was considering as well, and I just tried to have a little bit more open mind about some of the picks. But, yeah, that's where my vote would be.
I like that. Okay, Chase, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with yours. I joked around earlier that I got mixed up because I liked your damn picks. But, yeah, I like what you did, especially the first 4 rounds. I mean, like we said, round 5 is you're rolling the dice no matter who you're taking there. But I really like the idea of taking Bowers, like you said. In Dynasty, being able to get that shot at really being able to take advantage of positional scarcity and get that mismatch that nobody else has a chance to have. I like that shot in the first round with Bowers. Corum, again, like we talked about with a couple of other guys that like my 2 running backs fell into a situation where we could see him, sooner rather than later have a really big role. McCaffrey and Rice, I already gave my thoughts on there. So I liked what you did there, Dan.
Oh, I appreciate that, buddy. Adam, who would you select here?
For me, it's Chase. There's, picking, especially, in those situations where you were right after me, I would take my number one guy off the board, and then my next guy on my board would go right to you, especially in the Adonai Mitchell, Jermaine Burton situation. I had those guys neck and neck. And, that's, to me, fantastic value to get at the 2-9. At 3-4, Javon Baker was one of the better picks there in round 3. And then Tyrone Tracy, I think, is just at a glance at the board, probably my favorite pick of round 5. So, I think you killed it for sure.
Okay, we've been spreading it around already. So, Chris, is anybody going to get a second pick here, or we're going to spread it out completely?
Yeah, this is a tough one, Dan, for me. I'm down to 2 people here. I really like what Chase did. I think Chase had a really good, draft as Adam alluded to. I really like the idea of getting Tracy in that 5th round. That was kind of the cherry on top for me. But I'm going to go with the guest, Dan. Our guests always win on our show, and so I'm going to go with our guest as having the best draft.
We all got one pick. Good job, gentlemen. We all tied. It's called a 5-way tie right there.
5-way something, but
yeah,
we don't speak like that on this show.
Chuck, thanks for coming on to our show, man. And thanks for taking the time out to do a rookie mock draft with us. I know things are crazy with you. Give a shout out to the listeners. Let them know where to follow you. What do you got coming up next, man? We all want to know.
I am the host of the This Guy Sucks podcast on YouTube. I am just always just doing everything I can to embarrass myself on Twitter, having fun. Looking forward to a lot of fun this summer, a lot of great content. I just want to shout out you guys. Not only have you guys been doing excellent work, but being on the show, being in the mix. I've been on a lot of shows where there's multiple people, multiple hosts. It's not always easy. You guys make the guests feel not only very comfortable, but actively involved. A lot of good flow, good conversation. So appreciated being a part of the experience. It's always a good time.
Well, we really appreciate that, and thank you for taking the time to come on here. Adam, Chase, Chris, what do you guys got working on in the mix?
Well, you can always find me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at STTChaseFFB. Here in the next week or so. Next week starts my best ball season here. I'll be diving into that and spending money that I don't have. Trying to get some practice.
Underdog Fantasy with promo code ffadvice. Sorry, I just had to throw
there. No, get the plug in because that's where I'll be playing. So I'll be hitting the best ball drafts hard next week. I'll be releasing some best ball rankings next week as well. So find me, like I said, STT Chase FFB, and look for me on the Fantasy Football Advice Network as well.
Adam, where we can follow you at, buddy?
Yeah, at LaRue Adam. Look, I'm not going to try to spell that for you, but come see our beautiful faces. Come watch the video version of our content. The podcast is great, especially when we're doing the mock drafts. You got to see what's going on. So look at the screen, get rid of that apostrophe, switch the last name and first name around, and you're right there. So that's how you can find me on Twitter. And then, kind of like Chase, what you were saying, I'm in to interact with the people over on the Fantasy Football Advice Network. So get over there, make an account, and start posting over there. And let's chat some fantasy football.
It's a community. It's a social platform specifically made for fantasy football, so you can get out all the extra nonsense going on Twitter and on Facebook. You just come on in. We're all in that chat. We're talking every single day, posting this kind of content. Whatever kind of questions you have, we're in there answering them. It's just a big, nice community made by Fantasy Football Advice Network. Very happy to be a part of it. And Adam, I just wanted to say for your last name, if anybody's ever watched hockey ever, they know how to spell your last name. It's actually not as difficult as
That's great.
Chris, you can find him, of course, at Operation Domination, OP Domination FF on social media. Find me at Dan Mater FF. We'll be back next week at 9:30 on Wednesday at FF Advice Network on YouTube. Make sure you download Operation Domination. Search for on any podcast platform out there. It'll pop right on up, and give a follow to our fellow FFAN podcasts as well. We'll see you guys next week. Be good till then.